And since nothing is happening quite yet, although we're going to keep an eye, I'm going to bring in our guest analysts at this hour to give some predictions on what we may see the court doing in terms of sentencing. Still with me, trial attorney and former prosecutor Stuart Ryan, and also just joining us on the program, attorney Tammy Allison. She is a former DOJ senior attorney and also a former federal prosecutor. Thank you both for being here. And Tammy, I want to say welcome to you since you're just joining us this hour. I want to begin with you first, please. The judge has a range that she can look to for an appropriate sentence for Stefanko, anywhere from 20 years to life in prison without parole. You're familiar with the facts. Where do you think the court may go with a sentence for her, and why, please?
Thank you for having me, Julie. I think because of the fact that Miss Dunson's, I'm sorry,
Stefanko,
the fact
okay.
that Ashley Biggs, her estranged boyfriend, given the fact that he has already been sentenced and he's sentenced with life without parole, given that fact alone, Ms. Stefanko may receive a lesser sentence because of the fact that he did plead guilty. He did not burden the court with a trial, and he was sentenced to that life without the possibility of parole, which in my experience does reduce the likelihood of a sentence similar to that for any co-defendant or co-conspirator that's involved with an individual that is involved in something that is as heinous as this crime.
Right, so Chad Cobb, he struck up a deal, and I do want to emphasize this for our viewers here. So he is the one who physically committed the murder of Ashley Biggs, who he was involved with. They were in a relationship, had a child together, GC. He was the one who physically did the killing. And initially, this was a capital case. The prosecutors were pursuing the death penalty, and he struck up an agreement agreeing to plead guilty to murdering her to avoid the death penalty and serve a life sentence. So that's also important to know, and he gave some very self-serving testimony. Stuart, you helped me analyze that earlier. With Erica, we know, yes, she's a murderer, yes, she's convicted. We know she didn't physically do the murder, but she made the call that set it all into motion. She set up Ashley Biggs to meet her death. Stu, tell me, under the law, for those who may have difficulty kind of wrapping their head around how she could be just as culpable as Chad Cobb, how does that work? Explain that to us, if you would, kindly.
Sure. I mean, under the law, accomplice liability, just like conspiracy, you are in accomplice liability assisting, and the way that it's looked at is really without your help and assistance, this crime never happens. And I think that's really one of the key facts here. If she doesn't make that phone call, if she doesn't agree every step along the way, you're just as guilty as the person that might carry out the physical acts of murder. And this particular individual, we just heard that the young child, the daughter of the victim, was actually present when she made the phone call. That's something that's going to be seared into that young person's brain for the rest of her life, and really is going to perhaps, unfortunately, even alter the way that she lives her life. That sort of trauma can be really debilitating and significant and requires work to overcome. And I think the judge is going to take a look at that when sentencing her. And one of the other interesting things I thought about was the judge's ruling with respect to whether or not this defendant was going to have to appear in person. And I think the fact that she actually denied that motion and is having the defendant here in court might be a tell that she's going to give out a significant sentence here today, and that she wants the defendant to be here to see the victim impact testimony and to hear the words of the judge eye to eye when she meets out this sentence.
That's a really good point, Stu. Thank you. This judge, she is very highly regarded, has a tremendous reputation for judicial excellence in the community where she served. She's in Summit County, Ohio, and prior to taking the bench, she was a trial attorney, worked for a tremendous firm in the Cleveland area, and she knows how to run a trial as an advocate and as a judge, and so I know we can expect a very thoughtful, informed decision upholding the rule of law from her today. And Tammy, I want to ask you, as someone who served as a prosecutor, what are some of the things you think Her Honor has been thinking about with this case? She presided over it, she took in all of the evidence, she knows it well. What do you think she's really going to be considering when it comes out to handing Erica Stefanko her sentence today?
I think it all lies in the victim impact statements, honestly. Listening to the victim impact statements, how it affected her daughter, who was present whenever that phone call was made, how it's impacted other family members, the service that she has to the country with her prior military service is also going to play a part in the judge's decision when she's meticulously taking notes, listening to those victim impact statements. I do believe that the judge will also take into consideration the witnesses that the defendant brings forward to speak on her behalf and how she has possibly encountered traumas in her past is typically what is brought up. And I do believe the judge might take that into consideration. But given the fact that there was that very bitter custody dispute, given the fact that the daughter of the deceased was present during that phone call that was made, I don't think that it's going to impact a lower sentence for her in this case.
Tammy, thank you so much. Great points from you both. That is Erica Stefanko. For those of you just now joining our coverage, we welcome you and thank you for spending part of your Tuesday afternoon here with us at Court TV Live. We're in multiple courtrooms today, and this courtroom is in Akron, Ohio, and it was several years ago. It was back in 2012. The night precisely was June 20th into June 21st, when Ashley Biggs, the victim on this case, thought she was delivering a Domino's pizza, but in fact, this is Ashley Biggs on the right here of your screen, and she thought she was delivering a Domino's pizza, and here she was met by her ex-boyfriend at the time, convicted murderer Chad Cobb. And at that time in 2012, he had moved on from his relationship with Ashley, and he was involved with defendant Erica Stefanko. They were married, and Chad was involved in this awful custody dispute over the couple's daughter, who we are referring to as GC, a minor child and someone who, you know, really barely remembers her mother. It's just so sad because she was so young at the time her mother was so brutally killed. But it was Erica Stefanko's actions and making that call that set everything into motion, and her daughter was able to help get justice. The victim's daughter was able to really help get justice for her mother. And Stu, I want to pick your brain about that. And I am being told we're going to squeeze in a break because apparently there are some technical difficulties in the courtroom. As you can see, our cameras are working, but we have to have the audio coming from the courtroom. They have their own microphone system, and while that is being worked on, I'm going to ask Stu and Tammy to stand by. I've got more questions for them, and we've got more legal analysis and coverage for you. This is Court TV Live, your front row seat to justice.